Welcome to Wisdom Within with Tina and Tanya. It is the season of the witch, so we are talking all things witch wound. So stay tuned and make sure you check the description below because we're going to have some goodies in there for you. So if you are done conforming to others' expectations, if you're done suppressing your wants and needs, and you're done feeling like life has no meaning, and you're ready to build a supportive relationship really for yourself, with yourself, and you're ready to address the resentments and disappointments that come from suppressing your needs and wants, and you're ready to really transform your life from the inside out, then you're in the right place. We're going to teach you how to do this using practices that will support you mind, body, and spirit. So before we dive into this topic of the witch wound, which just makes me so happy to talk about, we're going to have Tina just kind of help us drop in.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got some sage going here and just kind of clearing the energy. And let's go ahead and just take a deep breath in. Pull yourself back into your body. Put yourself on your chair. And yeah,
Here we go.
here we go.
All right. So I realized as I said how this topic makes me so feel so excited. Sounds really kind of I don't know, like I love pain or something. Like that's not really it. But so for me, part of what has really sparked my interest in this topic of the witch wound itself goes back to my college days. So rewind like 20 something years. And I took a medieval European civilization class in college, and it totally spun me off on history. Like, and to that point, I hated history. And then all of a sudden, it opened up this whole new world, and I loved it. So fast forward to what, about a year ago, you and I discovered the book Heal the Witch Wound by Celeste
Hmm.
Larson, I believe is who it is. We'll put a link to the book below. And I remember reading that book and calling you and like, I could lead people through this because
Hmm.
not only do I have the historical side of it, but I also have 15 years of crisis response helping women and children through active crisis and active trauma. And it was just all so intertwined, and it just like my mind just exploded. But really, when we start looking at the witch wound itself and what it is this collective trauma that developed for generations during the witch hunts, during the burning times, and it has been passed down generation to generation to generation. So it went on for hundreds of years. It's been passed down for hundreds of years, and yet it still impacts us today. Is that kind of a good brief
Yeah.
description?
Yeah. And when I first read that book, when you told me about it, um, I hadn't realized how long it actually went on. I
Yeah,
was I was surprised at how long. So yeah.
yeah. And it was centuries, and we
Hmm.
think about like what's gone on. It's been under a century since we had World War II. So when we kind of put that into perspective, it's been less than 100 years since we had World War II. And yet that is still very part of our, like, that is a very big deal in our topics of discussion in history, world history, and everything, even now. So when we think about this on that global scale, and when we look at so many of us have ancestors from those European countries that were mostly impacted prior to it coming to America, and then even here, I mean, there's just no way that we don't avoid it, or that we can avoid it, right? That we don't experience
Hmm.
that and carry that. And when we think about, for me, truly understanding the impact of that is, imagine something like that happening, and put into perspective that the over 80% of the people that were killed were women. So think of a town 30 minutes from you where this persecution of women is happening, and they're being accused and tortured and murdered, well, tried and prosecuted, but murdered.
Hmm.
And
Right.
it's happening just a short distance away. There's no way that doesn't impact everybody in this town in 2 days' day that we would be in that space, right? And so for me, I can see what that looks like in that way, and how, I mean, I think of not just the women, but I think of the people who, the husbands, the sons, the daughters, the whole collective would have literally been living in terror. You would have, please not me, please not me, please not me. You know, you would have, at that was about the time that women started turning on women. Before, we didn't have that dynamic, right? And
Hmm.
when you can't trust other women, here we are, and it really shook us to the core. And not
Right.
just us as in women, like us as in all of Europe, all of America, like the world as a core, at the core. So, how does that pass down to us today? And I think that's what we really want to talk about, is like, what are the symptoms that we see today as a result? So when we were talking about that back when we read the book, what were some of your things that you noticed
Uh, uh,
for you?
the ahas I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's a lot of um, being scared. So being scared to put myself out there. So this is what I notice in myself. Being scared to put myself out there. That's sister wound. The wom like what you said, where the women have turned against each other. And I had that really bad with the not trusting other women and not, and so I've had to work through that myself. The uh, the fear of being seen, it's like, not me, not me, going back to that, I hope this isn't me. I hope this isn't me, so that fear of being seen, the fear of putting myself out there, the fear of women, of other women, the fear of, um, just standing in my own truth, the fear of being a spiritual person and owning it, because what if people think this of me, or what if people think that of me, or they think I'm devil worshiping or whatever, they're going to hang me at the
They're gonna burn me at the
burn me
stake,
at the stake.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. As I'm reading the book, I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you know.
I I see it too, and I think that there are so many things that are happening now that we don't recognize necessarily as that being the witch wound. So just like what you're saying, this fear of being seen, and really how it stops us, because it's our level of fear is not rational that we have for some of those things. You know, like, we're not in a world right now, at least you and I and the majority are not in a place where
Mhm.
we literally will be hung or literally will be burned at the stake. Like, that's not something that we have to fear anymore. But yet there's that, like, that's what we know. But yet there's
Mhm.
the fear here, that irrational piece that says it's not safe. It's not
Mhm.
safe. And we do have that within us, and it can be around our spiritual gifts, right? Like what you're saying, if I show up, people are going to think this. Like, I mean, I'm a lover of tarot, and there's taboo. Like, I'm a Scorpio, everything taboo is amazing to me, and I want to like take it apart and be like, ooh, why is this taboo? And yet that puts me in that fear-based response of, like, I'm very, it's very culturally okay to show up as like the sexy Scorpio woman, but if I show up as like that inquisitive, interrogative, powerful, embodied Scorpio woman, that's not as safe, right? Because it's like, welcome to
Mhm.
culture. But really, like, looking at those things that you're curious about, and how I need to hide it from people. I don't want them, they're going to think I'm weird. But it's even deeper than that. It's not safe to be weird. It's not
Mhm.
safe to be curious. It's not safe to be independent. It's not safe to, be able to heal myself, to be able to take my own body into my own hands, or all those things combined is what I see even within me,
Mhm.
with some of that too.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I'm at. It's that irrational fear of, I think the biggest one has been the spiritual,
Hmm.
letting myself be that woo person, in front of everybody and out on Facebook and out on, in the world. And it's very irrational because I know, logically, but my heart tells me it's not safe to be out there.
Hmm. Yep. Well,
And
and it's interesting how other people react to that too, right? Like we do have
hmm
those people who are just so scared for you. Why?
hmm
Because of
Yep.
the witch wound, right? Because
hmm
they are scared. And when I think of it's the crab bucket mentality, and that's how we kind of describe it in today's world. But when I listened and paid attention to this book, the crab bucket mentality is the witch wound. It's I need you to stay here because if you get out there, I'm not safe.
Yeah.
So this is me trying to keep you small. And we have that with people in our lives, right? We have that within our families a lot, especially, like my mother's side is very you need to stay in the box and now I understand it, right? Now I get why, because there is such a fear that if I break outside of the box, they're not safe. It's
hmm
drawing attention to them. If I go off being my black sheep self and reading tarot cards and doing energy healing and doing all of these things that do not fit in my family box at all. I am the proud black sheep. But I can see now why that created so much fear, even within my mom, and wanting to control me, wanting to keep me in the box. And there are the surface level things, of course, that we know around those things. Part of that is her religion, part of those are her core beliefs. But underneath all of that, it is not safe to her because if I make waves, if I draw attention to the family, that takes away her safety. And when we strip it down to that bare root, that is the witch wound.
hmm
And that is how it shows up in families and specifically, I think, maternal,
Yeah.
because it's women, it's the women line. And it can be either line, but that's where I see it more than anywhere else.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about my family, and that's definitely, I definitely have a lot of that dynamic too, where, you know, I, because I'm kind of the black sheep too. And so it's kind of like I won't stay in that little box and I won't do the little things that they think that I should be doing. And so, um, yeah, it does give them that feeling of, oh, she's going to draw attention to us, and now we're not going to be safe.
Hmm.
I never really thought about it that in that way. So that's interesting.
Hmm. It has helped me, honestly, like one, and for me, when I think of what's the point of healing this wound, it is for
hmm
us, right? Like it gets to be for us, but it is, and for me, doing this work around it has really helped me have a better understanding with that line and even with my mom and understanding kind of where she is because I see it as a fear-based response and reaction rather than out of spite or hatred or meanness or whatever else it could be. Like I have a lot more compassion for her now than I ever did before, just because I see it as, transport ourselves back hundreds of years. And if you believe in past lives, you probably have past lives where you were affected by that in one way or another, and probably even in multiple ways. And so, but if we just take back to that history, what would women have been doing at that time? Lay low, be quiet, stay silent. It's not safe to draw attention to you. It's, all those things literally meant death and destruction if you drew an eye to you. So then here we are being our black sheep selves, all like, hey, I'm going to live my best life. It draws attention to you, and now everybody in the home and in the family isn't safe. And it just makes it click to me. I'm like, okay, this clicks.
Yeah. And that so those generational patterns or that generational wounding comes back. It definitely is in our genes. I mean, it's like we carry our families, our genes, we carry that fear in our genes. So we were actually talking about this with my stepdaughter this last weekend, and she mentioned, the collective consciousness and how we are a part of that consciousness. But she was also talking about some studies that were done with the monkeys, like 100 monkeys. If you teach 100 monkeys how to fish, then all of the monkeys in the world are going to know how to fish. And how does that work? It's that collective consciousness that we are all tapped into. So if you go into the quantum physics and whatever, which I know hardly, I know this much about, but it's that entanglement. We're all connected. We're all connected to that collective consciousness. And it's been proven by science. That's a scientific study that they did that shows how, um, you know, you teach those 100 monkeys and it's passed down from generation to generation. After that, all of the monkeys know. And so putting that back into perspective with our witch wound, they were taught, just like what you were saying, lay low, keep yourself safe. It's not safe for you to put yourself out there. It's not safe for you to be in that. And so they taught those 100 women that, and it's all it took, and now it's moved all the way down into our genes now, which is, how many generations down. So,
Right, right. And I think the beauty about it is, and I run a Heal the Witch Wound journey. 'Tis
mhm.
the season. We started it this weekend, and one of the participants in there, we had done some guided stuff, and then we were sharing a little bit about what came up. And it was absolutely beautiful. It almost brought me to tears. And she said that she just felt like with the collective women who lost their lives during that time, and men as well, but 80% of that women, it was like this message that we've got you. It's time for you to rest. We'll pick it up from here. You've done enough. I even get chills just as I say that.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
I just was like, oh, I thank you for that perspective and for sharing that with our group, because that is the point too, right? Like recognizing that it's there and we can heal the wound without losing the memory. We can still honor what they went through and all of those things and allow ourselves to fully express who we are is a way of healing that wound, but also healing it for future generations. Like not only are we bringing that, but that wound forward, but we're also bringing the healing and remembering. For me, it's tapping into those old ways. I just love it. I love feeling the old ways come in, and that is a form of healing, and it's healing me. But then the way I show up with my family, it's also passing down that healing, even though I've already had all my kids and they're mostly adults, basically. It still counts. It's never too late. It's still working. So the healing work that you do now not only is going to help the previous generations, but also the future. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that is really important to recognize because it can stop with us. The wounding, the memory doesn't need to go away, but the actual like being able to pass down the healing as well can be a gift to the world and to the collective in general.
Right. I totally agree. As we were talking about that, it just reminds me of all of the ancestors that I have that went through all of that, and it's like you just feel it and you feel, you're scared and you feel the fear. And when we talk about ancestral healing as um, healing ourselves, and we are healing ourselves. And as we heal ourselves, we're healing those ancestors and we're healing, like exactly what you just said, healing those that come after us and those that came before us. It helps with that healing I don't know, it's all of the collective. So we're just going to,
Mm-hmm.
move into that healing with all of us when we start working on it. But it starts with us, and it's that healing our fears and releasing those fears and stepping out as our authentic true self, and not being afraid to step out as our authentic true self. And just in that right there is healing.
Mhm.
And when we're able to do that, that's when it kind of spreads out for everybody else.
Mhm. And I think it's reminding us that just because we are aware of it and we know what it is that maybe, oh, this is what's holding me back, doesn't mean all of a sudden it just goes away. Like when I think of myself, even what I was willing to share even a year ago looks very different from what I'm willing to share now. And there's no requirement for anyone to share any of it, just so you know. But Tina and I are very public on our Facebook with our businesses and stuff. So it just kind of naturally comes out for us because that is part of the work that we do. We have spiritual practices. This is what we do. If I didn't have a spiritual practice, I probably wouldn't be sharing that on Facebook or
Mhm.
whatever. But when I look at where I was even a year ago versus what I'm willing to share now, it's been, for me, it has felt like I've like dropped little hints along the way. But then when I see how quickly it's happened, I'm like, oh, I must have been dropping some serious chunks.
Yeah.
Like there was no little bits. It was like in my
Right.
mind, I'm just dripping a little bit as I go. But then when I see it, I'm like, holy crap. And then I have those moments where I'm like, why am I holding back? I don't need to do that anymore, you know? And so then I do feel better because I am able to be honest with how I'm showing up.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's like, okay, that's no longer an issue for me. Now I talk about that all the time, but now there's something new and I still kind of tiptoe that. So I don't think there's a wrong way to do that if you choose to. It's just being aware that this is what it is,
Yeah.
and not allowing it to hold you back. This is where it's like, I'm not going to rearrange my entire house because someone comes over and might see all of my spiritual stuff,
Cool
you know?
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot. That is one thing that it can come up, you know, if you're not willing to let people come in and see you in your space for who you are. If your decorations have to be okay for whoever happens to walk in, that is part of this wound. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
definitely. As a matter of fact, that was in the book too, talking
mhm,
about the altar. If you have an altar
mhm,
that you're scared that your family's going to see, and you, as soon as you know they're coming, that's
mhm,
part of the wound.
mhm,
Um, and there was something, as you were talking about that too, was um, I saw this show up for me last year with the spiritual. So I do ceremony, and um, was it last year? Yeah, I think. What is time?
previously, I know, whenever it was.
But yeah, it showed up as I wanted to do ceremony, but I was afraid I wasn't doing it right.
Mhm,
And I was afraid that, well, what if I'm not doing it right and somebody's going to tell me that I need to do it this way, or tell me, And so to me, I feel like that is part of that wound too, because
absolutely.
you know, um, I realized, and when I finally kind of put my foot down with myself and was like, look, you do it your way, other people do it their way, and it's all okay. And, just like I think you told me this morning, it's like my ancestors aren't going to, they don't care how I show up. They're not going to
Yeah, they're
zap
not
me.
going to be like, you didn't hold your mouth straight when you asked
You
this
didn't,
specific
yeah, that's
question.
it.
So,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had to kind of really, really dig deep in and allow all these things to be me. I mean, it's just like even with my drum making, when I'm making a drum and I make one that's kind of, it's different, or and I look at it and I'm like, these
It's
drum
not the
makers are gonna,
traditional.
yeah, the
Hmm.
drum makers are gonna be yelling at me, did I, what? what I do, or if I say something about the drum, my drum makers, all these drum makers are gonna tell me that I'm stupid and I didn't know what I'm talking about, you know. So
Hmm.
all those kinds of little issues, I think, all are part of it, you know, part of the wounding itself. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what are some of the things that you do for healing? Um, I would love to be able to give them some ideas for people who are listening. Like,
ideas.
what can we do to heal the witch wound in ourselves?
And you know, we talked about creating altars. And we talked about that in a previous video that I think we'll link below. But it creating an altar and um, just connecting with those ancestors and however is comfortable to you. And that's it. It's not. There's not a certain way. There's nothing that I can, you know, I can't tell you just to go specifically. I talk to the ancestors in my head, or you know, I'm like, or I take them coffee every morning and I'm like, thank you, you know, here's your coffee. And so, I think you know, doing a little altar is one good way, because that gives you that little ritual. And if you have a little ritual that you can connect a little bit deeper with your ancestors, I think that is really helpful.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and the focus, because remembering this is ancestral wounding. And
mhm,
so there is going to be ancestral work. Now, if you don't know necessarily your heritage, it's okay. Like it can
mhm,
be the collective of that time. So it doesn't have to be like, I don't know any of my lineage that was alive at that time. I'm sure I could
right.
find it somewhere, but I don't want to. So for me, rather than trying to connect with an individual, I just take the idea of the
Of the
ancestors of
ancestors.
that time. I
Yeah.
actually do have things on my altar that are like my grandmother's. So I am specifically like, I feel it more in that line personally
Hmm.
than in my father's line. So I'm kind of like going in that direction. But again, it's like they're not going to be like, oh, you picked the wrong person. Sorry. You know, like
Yeah.
that's not a thing. So
Yeah.
I do things that remind me of my intention and what I'm working on. And that is enough.
Hmm.
That is correct. So just
Right.
wanted to put that out there for people who are like, I don't even know who my ancestors are.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither. And that's okay.
And to me, when I'm talking about my ancestors, it is the collective.
Mhm.
So, you know, I do have certain ancestors that I connect with a lot, but for me, it is the collective. It's all of, because we have ancestors, I mean, millions. We don't even know how many. There's millions and millions behind us, you know, and it's not just a bloodline. It's not just you know, it's those ancestors who it's just the people that came before us. And so that's what I look at with the ancestors. Um, so another way, I guess, of healing would be maybe just being intentional in what you're doing, you know, in if you have prayers, if you have little rituals in the mornings or whatever, intentionally, that it's kind of goes back to the, you know, setting up the altar, but being intentional with connecting with with those ancestors, and how can I how can I help, or how can I, you know, because they will, if we allow it, they will give us those hints on how we can um work with them and how we can heal. um and then it goes down to just for me, it's like learning how to step into your power, you know, healing yourself, doing that, even if it's self-help stuff, even if it's those little videos that you can, or Spotify, what are they called? Podcasts,
Mhm.
anything that helps you to kind of start stepping into your own authentic self, I think is another way of healing that too, because when you start healing yourself, that's when you're healing others. So,
Mhm.
and I know you have a ton more ideas.
Well, I'm not going to list them all because I feel like we would be here forever. Um, I do guide people through this work, through
Hmm.
healing the witch wound journey. So it is oh, it's a love of mine, but I cannot not say shadow work
Oh, yep.
because it is, and that's where I go, right? But
Yep.
it's, I have two thoughts with that because number one, doing my own shadow work on my fear is really important because I want to know what's at the root of it. I want to know why this is preventing me from chasing my dreams or ending that relationship or starting that relationship or whatever the topic can be. So really dialing down, asking, seven layers, if not more. And what about that? And what about that? And why is that scary? And why is that not safe? And where is that coming from? And is that even correct? And who said? And why do they get to be right? Like all those things are part of my practice in really getting deep in shadow work. And that is for myself to understand where this is holding me back. But then I also love the idea of not just mine, right? Like looking at how this shows up in others as a we, and how why is it coming up as a we? And because that isn't yet another challenge, right? Because I can work through all those fears myself. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And I step forward and then I get attacked, right? And so being able to, I can't do other people's shadow work for them, but I can see where it's coming from them. And I can create like an offensive strategy, for myself to be able to be like, okay, this is going to come at me. And so what if it does? And here goes the shadow work again from that perspective of here's me doing my work and here's me doing the work pre work for when it comes so that I
Mhm.
know it's going to come.
Right.
And I know it's fear and I know it's from them coming in like, no, you're a woman, women in general, right? If you start stepping out of the box and you start really excelling and skyrocketing and doing well, none of the rest of us are safe because now the collective is going to come and burn you, and now I'm not safe too. That's
Mhm.
just what it is. And so being able to kind of prepare myself for some of that is also helpful. Doesn't necessarily have to be as deep, it's just kind of like doing some pre work of how that's going to feel within my body and how that's going to feel within my psyche and how that's going to whatever, and really kind of looking at that through those two different lenses.
Yeah, we did a video about shadow work too, so we'll
We're
have
going to
to
have a
link
lot of
that below.
videos too.
Yeah, I know we're like, oh, we did a video about that. We did, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah. And then I also feel like energy work
yes,
is
definitely.
probably one of the best things that you can do for this type of wound healing. Because a lot of it is in our DNA and it is passed down, but a lot of it is energetic as well. And so being able to find your correct practitioner, I love to do that work with Reiki, and I do that on myself as well, and for me, that is typically in that sacral center. And
Mhm.
that's usually where I see it, feel it, find it, which makes sense because that's the womb, right? And
Mhm.
so
Right.
it would make sense as that would be the place where at least I recognize the majority of the wounding from
Mhm.
this witch wound is in that center. And so really spending time supporting that center, wearing those colors, eating those foods, and doing that, extra time there doing energy healing with that focus, meditation, visualization, those types of things too are really
Yeah.
key for me in this.
We I know we know of a few practitioners that specifically work with ancestral healing too. So if you are looking for, and I mean I know you do too. So it's like if you're looking for a practitioner that can help you with that, that's you know there are practitioners that do that too. So,
Mhm. What else? Do we have any others that we can like bring up before we
um,
summarize it?
I don't know. I was trying to think because there's a lot to it. And I was trying to, I don't think, I think I'm good for now.
Think you're good? I think it's pick one, right? Just
Yeah,
start with one. And this is one of those things that we don't need to rush, but we also don't need to get caught up in the details, in the hows, in the whys, in the whats. Just really, this is a place of trust, to trust that the healing is going to happen as needed, the timeline that's needed. We can't control that. And so just allow that the things that we do will take their own course and take their own time and look their own way, and really not get caught up in comparison of, well, I see her doing these things and working through, so I need to do it that quickly too. And if not, then there's something wrong or whatever. No, we're all different, right? My timeline's going to be very different from your timeline. I'm splenic, so if I finally have that moment, then it's done, and
yeah,
I don't revisit it. I don't go back. It's done. But I do know that for other people, it is correct to have that come up and to sit with it and to feel into it, and like that is also correct. So really step out of that comparison mode and just let your experience be your experience.
right. I love that. And I mean, that's with all healing, right? Is that we allow that to just be our experience and not compare it to other people's.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, if I was to compare myself with you, I'd be in big trouble.
And I feel the same way about you. That's funny. Um, I just had one other thought come in that I wanted to share, and I can't remember what it was, so it must be
Uh-oh.
not meant to be. Oh, I think one thing that can be helpful with this, and this is just to kind of plant that seed, but we have a mother wound. You know, anytime you start doing healing on yourself, the mother wound comes up. And I used to tell my kids that all the time because, you know, in my previous line of work, I dealt with trauma exclusively. And I knew that at some point, no matter how perfect of a mom I could be, my kids will have something to overcome from the way in which they were raised by their mother. It's just is. Don't take it personally. Welcome to the planet. This is just how life goes. But with that, for me, it's been really looking at this mother wound in a different light, being able to view it through the witch wound, believe it or not, has been very healing for me personally. And so I think it's also reminding myself that we all carry it, including those, whether it be family or community or collective, having a little compassion and recognizing that other people are going through this as well, I think is also worth mentioning and honoring. Because if we didn't know we had it and we didn't know we needed to heal it until now, the majority of the collective has never had an opportunity to, let alone even been aware of it until now either. So I just think that's important to bring up and to remind that we don't necessarily have to initiate healing, because we can't really initiate healing in others, but I think it's okay to talk about it, but just be patient, be compassionate, and for me, be grateful for the fact that now we know.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And you bring such a wealth of information with it. I'm just like, okay.
5 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell did I say? Crap. I know. I
I'm
always
just
look
like,
back on
I'm
these.
absorbing.
I look back on these and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. Oh, well, it's out there. Here we go. Here's my witch wound, right? So,
Right. I know what you mean. I do the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah, right. Okay, so with that, do we feel complete for today?
Yeah, I think I
Okay,
do.
I do too. So we'll go ahead and have you just bring us
All
back
right.
to
Let's
reality.
just take a deep breath in. Bring your body back in, or your not your body. Bring yourself back into your body. Allow yourself to be in your body right now. We're good. I don't even know. See, you got me all.
We're all over. Well, it was
Oh,
funny because when you said that, I had that question in my head of like, where am I?
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm in like the 1400s. Like I can see
yeah.
the
It's like
architecture.
yeah,
So it's like, okay, we're coming back to
Need to
whatever the hell you're
bring
wearing.
it back. Yeah.
Welcome to the Tina and Tanya show. Like
Right.
this is how we live our lives.
Exactly.
I love it. All right. So with that, we're going to have tons of links for you down in the description below. Make sure you check that out. Also, make sure you look at our Wisdom Within toolkit because we help you go deeper into these topics through that toolkit. So that will be linked below, all kinds of goodies. So make sure you check out our description. And as always, please hit subscribe, like, share, all the things that really help us get this message out to the collective, speaking of. So, all right, until next time.